Hello and welcome to this video where we'll go into getting data from an API. And the API that we've chosen is Trafiklab. And from this API, you will be able to get data on public transport. It's good to understand a little bit about the data set so that you could, for example, monitor if there's delays in trams or trains. So yes, moving on, we'll go into the web browser directly now. So here I'm in the web browser and I've gone into trafiklab.se/API. Let me move myself here. In trafiklab.se/API, we have several APIs that we can work with. And the ones that we will pick are those that are in resrobot. So here, resrobot stolptidstabeller, here you can get the timetables for different stops. So we will go in and see more details how to work with this one. And this resrobot reseplanerare is used for planning your trip. For example, you want to travel from Göteborg to Stockholm or to Malmö. You can find out which type of trains and buses there are and their stops, etc. So this is quite interesting, and it's an open API so that you can use it for free. The only thing you need to do is to create an account and register for these APIs to use. Firstly, if you scroll up here, there's Mina sidor or My Pages. So clicking on this one, we'll go in here and you can create an account. For me, I will just log in with GitHub. So that you can do if you have a GitHub. And here, you should create your own projects. So basically, I have a few projects. I have streaming data and I have this testing. And there's also a sandbox here. So you should create a new project. So when creating a new project, you give it a name. I'll give it, for example, a travel planner. And you can link to a homepage if you want, but if you don't, it's okay. You can choose what type of project it is. It's an educational project and open source repository if you have that, but you don't need to. Description is also good to have, or it's mandatory because these are optional. Description, learning, let's see. Learning Trafiklab API. Save. So here I have the travel planner, and now you should get your API keys, and it's basically like this. You choose which type of API you want, and the one we want to pick is resrobot. Let me see. Here, resrobot version 2.1, and then you click add key to project, and you will get an API key. Here are the API keys. I won't go down to the API keys because I don't want to share them with you. Instead, you should go down there and copy that specific key because we will use it in order to use this page, APIs. Moving on to when you have the key, store it in a .env file. I'll show you how that looks soon. Or actually, we can go there directly. I'll go to Visual Studio Code. And here in this project, I'll open a new terminal. And let's see what I will do. I will do patch.env so that we get a .env file. And inside this .env file, you should write API equals to your API key, the ones that you've copied. So just copy and paste it here. And then we'll go back to Visual Studio. We'll go back to Trafiklab and inside of API keys. Or actually documentation. You go to documentation and you go into API overview right here. And we can go into resrobot, stolptidstabeller, for example. Click on this one. And here there is an example on how you call this one. So you basically just copy this one, departures and arrivals, right? So you copy this one in order to get the data from this one. But then you need to create if you're using Python, which we're using in this course and in this lecture, we will use the request library and we will do a GET request to this endpoint and using our API key. And also you can go down here to read a little bit more about different options and what they mean. So I won't go through them. Instead, I will leave it to you for you to read. But let's go back to Visual Studio Code now. And let's set up different things. So let me do this. I will create a virtual environment. So uvvnv source dot .vnv bin activate. So now I've activated my virtual environment, and I will do uv pip install. What do I need? Well, I need the IPy kernel, of course, because I will work with Jupyter Notebook. I also need pandas, and I also need, let me think, what do I need? Request. I need, just starting with this, I think. .env, of course, so python.env. One thing with .env, it is for so that you can store your secrets. I'll show you what that means soon. So let's create a Jupyter Notebook file now. So touch, let me see, touch API public transport .ipnb. Okay, and now we'll open this one. So we'll do an EDA on public transport Trafiklab API. And then I'll change this to my virtual environment. So let's start with testing out our .env. So from .env, import load.env. And we need to import OS as well in order for us to get the environment variable. And then we'll do import requests. And starting with our load.env, we can do like this. Start with load.env. In general, you need to have a path here. But when you're in Jupyter Notebook, you have the path is based on where this file is. So since .env is a sibling to this file and this Jupyter Notebook, then .env will be found. So when we do load.env, and then we can do os.getEnv, and we take the API. If we go into .env, we can see that it's just called, I will call it API key. And then I will do API key here. And if I run this one, we can see we get dot. That means that the Jupyter Notebook finds this .env. Okay, great. So now I will just pause the video and I will put in my real key. So remember, the real key can be found in Trafiklab where you logged in. I've added my real key, and of course I won't show that to you. It's important that you add .env to your .gitignore file if it isn't there already. So that is to make sure that it's not tracked by Git and that you don't accidentally push it to a public GitHub repository. So this is in order for us to, because we don't want to write out the API key here directly, because when I push it, then people will see it in my repository and can use my API key. So secrets, store it in .env and load it using load.env. Okay? So then this one, I can just call it API key equals to this. So if I run this one, it is stored in API key, but I don't write it out so that you can't see what it is. However, I will use it later on. So now we'll go into Trafiklab. So here in Trafiklab, let me see. So in Trafiklab, we have, if we go into our resrobot route planner, you can start here. And you can see this example call. Let's copy this one. So it says, this example call retrieves all routes from Stockholm Central Station, this ID, to Malmö Central Station, another ID. So I just copy this one, and I go back to my Visual Studio Code, and I will call URL equals to this. Make it into a string and make it into an F string. And then I will also make this API key into a variable so that I can use this API key inside of this URL. Okay, so since we can read it out here. So api.resrobot.se version 2.1/trip. So it's the API. We query we're using the format. This is an option. The option is a format we choose JSON, and another option, origin ID equals to this ID, and dest ID is destination ID, is this ID here. And then we have pass list equals true, and show passing points equals true. Actually, I'm not sure what both of them are. It's listed in the documentation in the web page, which you can read about. And then most important, very important, is that we have the access ID, which is our API key, right? So that is very important, and we get the API key from our .env. So that is how everything is connected. So now we have our URL. So this is an endpoint for us to retrieve data. So in order for us to get the data, we need to do request.get. And basically we just put in the URL and we call this response equals to this response. And I run this one. Response 401. Why is that? Let me pause, and I will pause and debug this. Okay, I found a problem. First of all, I wrote response.text to see what text we get, and we get an error code which says API auth error text access denied. Okay, then I thought, based on this, what could be the problem? Maybe the API key is wrong. So I typed out API key and saw what I get. ... How strange. Even if I reran this one, I got API key. Because this is already loaded, right? That is how it works in Jupyter Notebook. When it loads one time, it won't load again. So this is important. If you have started with something else than your real API key, just do restart. And now I will remove this cell here. And if I run this one, now it should work. Yes, now it works. We can see there's response.text, and we have Stockholm Central Station, a lot of things here. So instead of getting it as a text, I want to get it as a JSON object. So JSON object is basically, in Python, is represented as a dictionary. So you have a dictionary of a list, and you have a lot of other things. So in dictionaries, a very important thing, what I usually do when I start working with API, where I get JSON data, is that I usually try to explore this API. So I explore this dictionary. So starting with this, let's continue. We can do like this. Let's see. Response that we can get this in. Response that we can call it results. Response.json result, and we do results.keys. And we can see what type of keys we have. So we have trip, we have result status, and technical messages, server version, etc. So there's a lot of things here. And actually in my Jupyter Notebook, in the lecture note, you can see that I've explored most of them, I think. However, you should also check them out. What we can do is like this. Since it's a dictionary, we can take out the trip here, and we can see that it's a list. It starts with brackets here. If it's a list, we can do like this. We can do length of this, and we can see 7. Okay, there was 7 here. We could do result of result status and see what that is. Okay, so some kind of metadata. I'm not sure what it is, but you can read in the documentation in case you wonder. We can continue here, technical messages, and see what we get here. Okay, so technical messages, we get something that I don't understand either. Let's continue going on down here, and we'll take server version. Probably I can understand what that is. Dialect version, plan RTS. I think those are not so relevant for us. So we will continue with the trip. So result of trip. So we can see here, it's a list, and now it's 7 items, right? So what we can do with this is that we could look through it. We can look through the list. And actually, in the lecture notes, I have created a function of the GET request, basically. So that is a little bit more elaborate, and you can choose it to use. However, here I can write out the function actually, because we will use it later on. Let's do that. Let's go into the function. I will create a function of it. I will just copy from the lecture note and I will explain that. This is what I did for the function. We can remove the API key as we had it earlier. So basically it's the same as before. We have a URL. However, the origin ID and destination ID, I put it into as parameters so that you can send them in as arguments if you want to choose other destinations and origins. Now the first one is Stockholm and the other one is Malmö, but I want to get Göteborg later on. So then afterwards we do a try, because the response object, the request.get, it can fail, right? It can fail with different exceptions. And if it has an exception, we also do response.raise for status. So in case, so it will raise an HTTP error if it occurred. So if you get status code 400 something, 500 something, then it's some kind of HTTP error. And that is what we're catching here with the except. So this one, result equals get trips, and we can get result.keys, and this is basically the same as I showed before. So now we have the trip, we get result trip, right? So we can call this, let me see, we can call, for example, trip, example trip equals to this one, and I will take the 0th of it, example trip of. So if I do example trip now, you can see that we get the first one. So origin is in Stockholm and destination is in Göteborg, Central Stockholm. Interesting. Yeah, I changed also here. This is another ID than the one I used before. So this ID is for Göteborg. But how do you know which ID corresponds to which city or which stop? That will come back to later on in the next section here. But we have Göteborg and Stockholm. So let's continue. We can figure out a little bit more things here. We can go into example trip, or for example, we can go into destination origin, and we can see that we get Stockholm, and it has these keys and these values. We can continue, copy this one and go into example trip of destination. And we can see that, okay, Göteborg Centralstation, etc. Cool. And you can explore more things here. But something I thought was quite interesting was, so if you go into example trip dot, you can run this one. And you can see here, origin, destination, and we have service days. Actually, we can do example trip.keys to find out what we have. So origin, destination, service days, leg list is quite interesting. So I'll do leg list. And this one, here we can see a lot of information. We have origin, we have destination. So we have several destinations, it seems. So we have Stockholm here, and then we have Karlstad. So we can continue to find out different types of stops. Actually, these names, I'm not sure what they stand for, but this is how they coded the response object. So we get a list here. This is quite interesting. So let's do length of this list. I want to see how many there are here. Okay, 2. I'll copy this one. Okay, for example, I will pick the 0. And in the 0, we have origin, destination. We can do dot keys. And we can see we have origin, destination, journey status, stop. It's quite interesting. So I'll continue, copy this one. I'll go into stops. And we can see, okay, stops. We have some key called stop. And then there's a list here. Okay, so we'll pick that one, stop. And we can see there's a list. Stockholm, Katrineholm, Hallsberg. Okay, seeing that this requires some domain knowledge. If you have travel trains between Stockholm and Göteborg, these are common stations that exist there. So these are the common stops. Okay, so this is quite interesting. So we could continue here and we could actually call, for example, these are different stops, right? We could call it example stops like this. And then I will loop through this one. So I will do like this. For stop in example stops. And I can do stop.get name. So basically get the same as using bracket notation. However, it won't return an error if the key is missing. Instead, it will give you none if the key is missing. So colon stop dot get. For example, I will get the arrival time or departure arrival time. Yeah, I could take departure time as well. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I need curly braces because I want to make a dictionary here. So basically I'm doing a list comprehension of the dictionary. So here we can see, okay, we started with Stockholm Central Station. We go into Katrineholm, Hallsberg, Degerfors, Kristinehamn, and Karlstad. Cool. Maybe the other section, because the length of these stops were 2, right? And these example stops that we have, maybe this is half of the journey. I'm not sure. This is worth finding out. Okay. But how did we get the Göteborg as the stop, as the ID, right? So this we need to use another API called resrobot stop lookup. So I will go into the browser. And we can see in the browser, we have stop lookup. And it will basically, you have here, this is the API. You have location.name, question mark, input equals Göteborg, and format equals, and if you do Göteborg question mark, then it's a search so that it will match something that is similar to it. So basically here you can see the input as the option and the search string. Append the question mark for search. That means we'll find something. For example, if we take without the question mark, we'll only get Göteborg here. This is the data we get. We get the ID, external ID, name, longitude, latitude, etc. But with fuzzy search, we'll get things that are similar. So everything with Göteborg is matched here. Okay, cool. But then we find the external ID, and then you use the external ID to put it into your travel planner or your route planner or your tables. So moving back to Visual Studio Code. Okay, so let's go into the stop lookup API here. We have stop lookup API. We use this to find the ID. I will copy the URL. And basically I can copy all of this here. I'll change this to Python. Okay, if you look into what we did here. So location is Göteborg. I have an F string so that I search on Göteborg, and this is an exact search now. We don't have a question mark. And we have a API key, and we have a result, basically. So if I run this one, we get the stop location or chord location. And we can do result, let's see, results of stop location or chord location. And I run this one. And we can see here we have stop location. And you can see name is Göteborg. And we can see, let's see, this is a list, right? So I can do length of this list, and it contains 10 values. So basically, okay, we have 10 stops. Okay, so I will do result of, actually I will call this one, I'll remove this one like here, and I'll do stop locations equals to this, give it a variable, stop locations, and then I'll do stop locations, I'll run this one. So we have, for example, 0, then we have stop location 0, and we could take stop location 0 of stop location, and we can take dot keys, and we can see the keys here. Okay, so it has an external ID and it has a name. That is interesting. So what if I do like this? So I copy this one and I take out the name Göteborg. Cool. And if I copy this one and I take out XID, external ID, and we get the external ID. So perfect. So this is how I got the ID for in order to put it into my route planner before. But if we have several, we want to pick the one that fits the best for us. And then basically just do like this. We can loop through this. Let's do for stop location in stop locations. Remember that stop locations is a list. Stop locations is a list of 10 values. And inside of stop locations, there is, so when I loop through it, I will get this value, and then I will get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 10, or up to 9. So here, this is a for loop, and I want to have top location of top location, right? And why do I do that? We can see that I did it here because that is how it was structured. So I needed to take this guy and do get the stop location. And from the stop location, I need to find the name, right? So then I can print the stop of name and stop of external ID. So here you can see, here are all the IDs for Göteborg. So basically I can also I will do a little bit better formatting here. So print f string, stop like this, and it should have a left alignment of 50 character wide field. This is what it means using f string formatting. And then afterwards, after this 50 characters, I want to have my next string. So my next string is external ID. So then I get stop here and I get the external ID here. And then I could left align these also so that it comes into the external ID. So what I do is here stop. I need to do similar here like this. And I need to do it into f string like this. Like this. If I run this one, let's see. Yes, nothing happens. But if I do colon, 50 character wide, and this means left alignment, other side means right alignment. So then, perfectly. Now it's easy for me to find out which one I want. So if I want to have, for example, again, then I just pick this ID here. Okay, great. And yes, I've actually in my lecture note, you should look into that. I have put it into a function which works, which you can use for finding other locations. That is actually quite good to have as well. So I will copy that one. So this is from my lecture note, access ID from location. So you just type in the location and it will find it for you. And basically it's the same idea as before. However, some important things here is that I use, so this is quite interesting. Okay, so this you've seen before. You get the response object and you get it as a JSON. You put it into try because it can be exceptions. Then you do this for loop. And here is one important part, is that stop data equals to next of iter of stop.values. That is the logic. And then it has an except for some errors. But with this one, you can just use this function immediately. So access ID from location. We can, for example, get Malm. And we're doing fuzzy search so that we have here, we see Malmö. And you can get the external ID. Malmö here, another ID. You can, for example, find a very small city here called Onsala. And you can see, yeah, here's what's found in Onsala. Actually, there's more stops in Onsala, but they don't have external IDs. And that's why you can actually test it out without this if statement here. And you will see more stations that corresponds to Onsala. But that's why I use this one in order for me to stop so that I can get the external ID, because without the external ID, I cannot use it further anyway. And also I can find something else. This interesting is another small city. And you can see, yeah, there's a lot here. Okay, perfect. Now we have this and we can move on to another API. We can move on to timetables. So in timetables, we go into resrobot and we have timetables here. And similarly, just copy this one here for departures and one for arrival. You can pick the ones you want. Fine. Let me go up a little bit and find. I will actually go and copy a copy from my lecture note here. So this is for Korsvägen stop ID, because if I go up here, I have Göteborg Korsvägen is this ID. I will copy this one. And I go in here and store it. So this is the stop ID. I use this one to get the results I want. And now, actually, I won't, in this part, I won't put it into function, but it is good practice for you to put it into function and do that. And I will leave that for you to do. Instead, I will just pick out some, I will show you using a data frame now. Import pandas as PD. We could do like this. If we write out results is a JSON object, right? That looks like this, departure. And it has a lot of other things. However, I'll just pick out the departure. I'll actually throw this away because it will clutter my notebook otherwise. I will do the pd.dataframe of results of departure. That is where my data is. So df equals to this, the timetable. Df timetable dot head, right? Head like this. And you can see, okay. So this is quite neat to work with. If you have a data frame, it's much neater than working with the objects directly. So before we unnested the objects and we looped through to get the things that we wanted, but now you can use the power of pandas and your panda skills in order to data process this. So basically you could do like this. df timetable dot columns, for example, and we can see what columns we have. We can pick out, for example, clean it, so that, for example, we want to pick out, what do we want? We want name, and we can see, yeah, these are the names. We could pick out what we want more. We could pick out the stop, when we have all the stops here. We could pick out longitude, latitude, which you could use to draw in a map, dots in a map if you want. and see if you can map out the body, direction. Here you can see where the directions are for the trams and buses. We could also which date we are using. So date, okay, 6th is today, and we can see the time. And yeah, I just accessed the data, so you can see that. Yeah, okay, here is a time in around 1 hour time, and you can see that we have, okay, 116 buses and trams included, that the departures from Korsvägen. Okay, so we could call this df timetable clean, for example, and then we could do df timetable clean, and we could find out, for example, name, value count, and we can see, yes, these are the unique buses and trams in this station at this particular time frame from 1911 to 2011. And you can see, yeah, these are the most common ones. And yes, you have uncommon ones, express bus, they are going further away. And flyg transfer means flight transfer, so they are also more uncommon. Yes. Okay, and with this, you can do more exploratory data analysis, but I will leave that for you. So with this, I would like to thank you for watching this video and see you in the next one. Bye.